welcome to the third episode of my series of music tutorial with FL Studio. Today I want to discuss a little bit of theory with you all. Now this may get complicated. Essentially, in music theory there's lots of things you want to do. You want to use chords, you want to use other things, all these sciencey things, but I recommend when you start, you should start with a simple, easy Locrian tune. Very easy to work out. So a Locrian tune simply just has, let me put it in perspective of major. Major has a series of half notes. It's listed on a piano as C to C. That's C major, that is, and the same thing in Locrian would be to B to B. They're based on notes relating to the major, which is the root, and then there's minor, which is the sixth, and there's a ton of things like that. So another thing you're gonna have to know is generally you want chords in your songs that play out, and if you want to make them sound bigger and more powerful, there's several types of chords you can use: thirds, fifths, sevenths, all those things. If you want to go crazy, you can use ninths and elevenths, but I would recommend not doing that because it can get cluttered. You really, when you're focusing on music, want to focus on a lot of things. You also need to keep in mind what key you're in. Keys are essentially what notes can be played in a specific song. Sometimes it's useful to go out of key in order to emphasize finality or movement or powerfulness, or you might want to introduce some polytonality in order to try and create a distinction between two unique forces in whatever you're talking about. So yeah, generally you're going to want to focus on that. Another thing that you're going to want to focus on is how fast your song is going. In order to do that, you'll need to adjust the tempo. If it goes too fast and you have too many notes barraging the ears, it can get too cluttered, but if it goes too slowly, the listener's just going to be waiting for the next note to play out, and you don't want them to just have to wait for too long, unless that is a deliberate choice, in which case you could do that. Another thing to point out in this case is that this may also be affected by time signature. Time signature is essentially listed as a number over another number, and that lower number is essentially what type of note can be played, and the upper number is the amount of notes that can be played in each measure. Measures are like sections of a song. So 8 or eighths notes, 5/8 is 5/8 notes, 5/4 is 5/4 notes, 4/4 is 4/4 notes, and 3/4 is 3/4 notes, things like that. Fourth notes are essentially breaking down from a whole note. So there's half notes, fourth notes, eighth notes, 16th notes. You get the gist. Keeps going like that, and you want to focus on what you're using. In a generic line of, let's say, 4/4, that's a very common time signature to work with. You're going to have 4 beats, and you want the hardness of each beat and the feeling to happen 4 times. If you're going with 8 beats, usually what you want to do there is have a beat that doesn't feel like it's hitting, because when you're listening to a 4/4 song, you hear 4 beats in your head, so you kind of want to do very strong and then something minor and then very strong, which gives that faster feeling without actually crowding. So it's actually really difficult to strike a balance there, because sometimes you do want a faster part, and sometimes you can actually change the key signature to something that's somewhat equivalent, or just make it sound like 8/8 for a part if you want that part to suddenly go twice as fast. Another way you can indicate that is a change in tempo at that time, which can help. So yeah, those are the largest things I can think of. Overall, if you're making a composition in FL Studio. You're going to want to focus on tempo. You're going to want to make automation clips. It's actually very hard to focus, and sometimes you need to know how to resolve a song. So like there's different types of chords within each key, like dominant chords and all these things that you gotta focus on. And obviously I'm not the biggest genius on music theory, but I think I do have enough of an understanding. Like generally there are things like if you're in a major chord, you want to resolve on the root a lot of time for a happier thing than if you resolve on the sixth, which is the minor chord. A lot of times that can feel like it's leading into something else. And resolving is basically where you like makes a song or a part of a song feel like it's ending. That can also be before it goes somewhere else. So like if you play a lot of really good notes and resolve it on something, it can just be like leading somewhere else. A lot of times in major songs, minor chord is like asking to go somewhere else. That's the best way I can put it. So like if you play the minor, it wants to lead into something bigger. If you don't, it's going to sound sadder, and generally major songs sound happier, whereas minor songs sound sadder. That's very common knowledge. But there's some other things you might want to work it with, like obviously Locrian, like I said earlier. That tends to give a feeling of anxiety, and a lot of times Locrian songs, even when they resolve, don't end up giving that same feeling of distress and that sadness gives. They both give kind of like an uncomfortable feeling, but Locrian tends to be more focused on anxiety than where minor is more of just sadness. And overall, I think it's best to check these on a piano. So like even just looking up a set of 2 octaves, you can see the relation between B and B and C and C and A. I think it's easiest to go with like variations of C major in each mode, because you can generally only touch the white keys, but you can still see the relations. And one important thing to note is in whatever mode you're in, no matter what it's based on, things will always be the same type of chord. Like chords can be in separate varieties, augmented, major, minor, diminished. Like in a minor chord, the root of the chord is always minor. So in a major, it's always major, and in Locrian, it's always diminished. And those things really help serve to try and assist that. Yeah, I'd say generally Locrian isn't used very much, but it's definitely something that can be used to great effect. So try and work on that. And there's some other chords that can also give pretty weird feelings. Like the feeling of a minor 6 can oftentimes feel very uncomfortable to the listener. And like a lot of chords that are just not used very often can give feelings of unease. And I think with chords you want to very much just try different things and see what sounds good and what gives certain feelings, while obviously staying within the key. Sometimes you want to go out, like I said earlier, but just stay within the key. Or, of course, you can just not do all that trash and just, who really needs music theory crap? It's bullshit, I tell you. Just let FL Studio create the songs.
け注射だやん頑張って